Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're literally tearing down everything you thought you knew about self-control. Look, if you've ever felt completely exhausted by the sheer effort of just trying to stay on track, trust me, you are definitely not alone. Get ready because we're going to look at human behavior through a completely paradigm-shifting lens.
Let's start off with a frustration I know we've all felt. You set a big goal. Maybe it's working out every single morning, eating healthier, or finally finishing that novel. You start off incredibly strong, right? But then, a few weeks later, you find yourself hitting snooze, skipping the gym, eating junk food, and binge-watching TV. What happens? Well, instantly, we blame ourselves. We say, man, I just don't have the willpower, or I guess I just lack the character to stick with it. But what if relying on willpower is exactly why you're failing in the first place?
Okay, let's dive into this, because we have fallen into a massive cultural trap. It's what we call the willpower myth. Society has basically taught us that to do something difficult, we have to wait for this magical surge of motivation. We kind of just assume that top performers wake up every single day feeling incredibly inspired and ready to conquer the world. But relying on that fleeting feeling, that's a total trap. Motivation is heavily tied to our emotional state. And let's face it, our emotions are completely unpredictable.
To really understand why willpower fails us, we have to look at something called the shifting priorities model from recent psychological research. See, for a long time, scientists thought self-control was just like a gas tank. You use it up, and then boom, you're running on empty. But current research suggests it's way more dynamic than that. Your self-control doesn't just run out. Instead, as you get tired, your brain actively shifts your priorities. It literally stops valuing the have-to actions, like eating a salad, and suddenly makes the want-to indulgences, like a giant slice of chocolate cake, look absolutely irresistible and totally justifiable.
So this begs a really interesting question. What actually happens to our behavior when we hit that absolute valley of fatigue? Think about it. When you've had a terrible, exhausting day at work, you're stressed out, and your brain just flat out refuses to make one more difficult decision, what does it default to? The answer to this is perhaps the most surprising plot twist in the entire science of self-regulation.
Now, what's really fascinating here is a study conducted with students at UCLA. Researchers tracked them during a normal, laid-back week, and then tracked them again during midterm exam week, which is obviously a time when their willpower and self-control were completely shot. And the data revealed something incredible. When those students were mentally depleted, their strongest, most deeply ingrained habits didn't just stay the same. The performance of those habits actually increased.
Psychologists called this the habit boost effect. When your willpower dies, you become completely locked into your automatic routines. Why? Because your brain is desperately trying to save energy. It outsources the decision-making directly to your environment. You literally lose the cognitive horsepower to deviate from whatever you normally do. And here is the real kicker. The brain's habit cueing mechanism is completely blind to your current goals. It doesn't care what you're trying to achieve.
Think about your own life for a second. After an exhausting workday, do you reach for an apple or a piece of chocolate? In that UCLA study, they found that exhausted students with a habit of eating pastries naturally ate way more pastries. But amazingly, the exhausted students who had a pre-existing habit of eating healthy hot cereal, they ate way more hot cereal. Both the desired habits and the undesired habits got a massive boost. When you're tired, you just do what you always do. No exceptions. Which brings us to this absolute, rock-solid truth. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our habits. When the pressure is on, when you are stressed to the max, you are not going to magically summon the energy to do the right thing. You will default to your automatic routines. And honestly, this proves the absolute necessity of building good, rock-solid automated habits.
Let's move to how this builds into the ultimate showdown, motivation versus discipline. Motivation is entirely transient. It's a feeling, it's highly emotional, and it really only provides these unpredictable random bursts of energy. Discipline, on the flip side, is a structured system. It's completely emotionless. It literally does not care if it's raining outside or if you're tired. And because of that consistency, discipline provides real compound growth over time.
As a recent piece from Leaders Performance perfectly summarized, motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a system. And honestly, this is an incredibly relieving truth. Top performers in business, in sports, in life, they don't have some magical inner drive that the rest of us are somehow missing. They don't sit around waiting to feel inspired. They've simply arranged their lives to make the right action the default action. They've completely removed the need for motivation.
And the crazy part is, we can actually see this happening right in the brain.
When you're relying on motivation and willpower, you are heavily using your prefrontal cortex. This area is great. It handles novel tasks and complex decisions, but it requires massive effort and it drains super quickly. But when you build discipline, you are literally shifting that behavior over into the striatum. Those are older structures in the brain that handle routine habits. The striatum triggers behaviors based on simple environmental cues and requires almost zero effort. So discipline is just the biological process of moving an action from the exhausting prefrontal cortex right into the automatic striatum. It's pure science, not a moral failing.
So how do we actually do this? How do we build this emotionless architecture in our own lives so we can finally stop relying on the fickle feeling of motivation? How do we guarantee that when our willpower inevitably crashes, and it will, we fall back safely onto a net of good habits?
The ultimate solution here is environment design. This is the practice of consciously structuring your surroundings to perfectly align with your desired habits. You are making the good choice the path of absolute least resistance. It's all about taking the heavy burden of choice completely out of the moment of execution. Think about it. If you literally don't give yourself the choice to do the wrong thing, doing the right thing just naturally becomes the default.
Here's exactly how you execute this on a practical level. Step 1. Decide your actions in advance. Step 2. Structure your physical environment. And Step 3. Remove absolutely all friction for your good habits while adding incredibly heavy friction to your bad ones. Want to eat healthier? Great. Keep fresh fruit sitting right on the kitchen counter, where it's the first thing you see, and literally lock the candy in a box on the highest shelf out in the garage. Want to work out in the morning? Lay your gym clothes out right next to your bed the night before so you literally trip over them when you wake up.
You also really want to program your brain in advance using what psychologists call implementation intentions. These are just simple, straightforward if-then plans. Like, if I feel stressed after work, then I will immediately go for a 10-minute walk. What you're doing here is anticipating your self-control dilemmas before they actually happen. You're completely offloading the decision to an environmental cue. You don't even have to think. Your environment just triggers the program.
And this brilliantly illustrates how it completely changes the entire life cycle of a goal. On day 1, you've got high motivation, right? You feel powerful. But by day 14, you inevitably hit that valley of fatigue. Your willpower fades, and honestly, this is exactly where most people quit. But if you've designed your environment and pushed through using friction and cues, you eventually reach day 60 and beyond. You hit systemic discipline. The action is now fully automatic. You just do it without even thinking.
You know, the ancient Stoics understood this perfectly, thousands of years before we ever had brain scans. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The Stoics knew that action is the prerequisite for motivation, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel ready. You act, and the alignment of your feelings will eventually naturally follow.
So the crucial point to take away from all this is, over time, this structure completely stops feeling like some mechanical strategy. It stops being just something you do, and it quite simply becomes who you are. It becomes your core identity. You don't have to convince yourself to be a healthy person or a productive person anymore. Your environment and your automated habits simply confirm that reality for you every single day. I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. You now know that relying on motivation is a totally losing game, and that your brain will always default to its strongest habits when things get tough. So, are you going to keep waiting around for that magical, fleeting feeling of motivation to strike? Or are you finally ready to redesign your environment, build the system, and let discipline do all the heavy lifting? The choice is entirely yours.